Yo,
Hey,
how are you, man?
good. Can you hear me? Is all the audio all good?
Oh yeah, the camera's fantastic as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, I got one specifically for this, but I needed one anyways. So
Yeah, I love the shot. I love the skateboard. I know you skate, right?
yeah, I've been a skater since 2019, 2018, back in San Francisco. I got really into like bombing hills and going down hills and stuff. So
Cool.
that was my entrance into skateboarding.
It's the perfect place to do so.
Yeah. Have you ever tried?
Yeah, I used to skate back in shit. It's a long story, but point is, I was starting to get kind of good. I hurt my knee, became a pussy, and got into the gym.
Yeah. Well, for me, now I don't want to injure myself,
Yeah.
because I like I work, I go to school, for me to get injured, it's like it's a big deal. And I've dealt with like the worst injury I ever had is I broke my leg
Oh wow.
in high school playing basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and that put me out for like 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm never like I don't want to repeat anything like that.
No, my injury was weak as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. I just hit my knee a little bit. The way I hit my knee kind of scared me when I left the skateboard, but it's such a meditative practice, man. Just riding the board, trying as many tricks as you can. The people are really cool as well. I feel like everyone wants to help you. There are a few assholes like in every community. But it's very tight, you know?
Yeah, the one thing about skating that kind of like repelled me away from it a bit was how there's like a big like drug and like party culture surrounding it.
Yeah.
So like you're gonna be like if you get into the skate community, you're pretty much gonna find a lot of people who are into like alcohol, like
Yeah.
smoking and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all this stuff that I was like not really trying to do. So I found some good skaters, like people who I really connected with well and stuck with them, but it is pretty rampant in the skateboarding community.
Dude, if you don't mind, I'm gonna be absorbing a huge yogurt while we record. I haven't had breakfast, so I made this quickly. Um, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course.
What's
What
up?
is it?
Um, it is. Have you ever had like Greek yogurt ice cream?
Yeah.
So it's like a bunch of that, 2 scoops of Santa Cruz medicinal protein. Um, the honey caramel flavor, it's so good. A little bit of collagen peptides, some blueberries, mango, and raspberries on top. I drizzled a little bit of honey just to say I'm eating honey. Um, and yeah, it's so good.
Sounds fire, dude. I actually had yogurt for breakfast too, so
Yeah, I think I saw you. Well, I saw that you posted some eggs.
I had eggs and yogurt. I didn't post the yogurt because it wasn't like as appetizing.
Not so aesthetic, yeah. Well, it's beautiful, dude. Let's give this a start.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, give me a little bit for the listeners and even myself. Who are you? What do you do? What got you to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. I was actually writing about this last night, just thinking about the topics that I wanted to cover, how I wanted to sort of talk about myself because I've never actually done something like this before. So, my name's Max. I am currently working with a business as a partial owner and also going to school at UC Santa Cruz. I'm about to graduate and I'm planning to go into business full time. The company that I'm with is Central Coast Live Foods. We make fresh organic cold pressed juice and we also make fermented sauerkraut crackers.
Mm,
So, have you ever tried fermented foods? I'm sure you have.
yeah, and sauerkraut is one of my favorites. So I'm super excited to get into that.
Yeah, we will definitely get you some. I'll have to get you some after this podcast is
Yeah.
over. But my journey was, I've always been into health and nutrition. Back in high school, I got big into weightlifting. That was kind of my entry into health and fitness. And I think that's a lot of people's entry into the health space.
Yeah.
at least in the sort of network that we exist in. So like people get into health, and when I started, I had like a very basic view of nutrition and fitness. Basically, my goal was just to get jacked and get strong, and I had a very simple view of like calories and macros and getting my macros in. And I ate way too much.
Yeah.
I bulked like crazy. And I also realized at that time that I was living a very like dopamine, like pleasure seeking lifestyle.
Okay.
In high school, it was very much when I started working out and getting into fitness, I was coming from a place of being sort of out of shape and
Mhm.
not having the tools to improve myself. And I was kind of in sort of like a negative cycle. So fitness was the first step of me sort of breaking out of that cycle and into like I would say a more sort of positive trajectory.
Okay. How'd you attack that dopamine lifestyle?
Yeah, well, like I said, first it was just weightlifting, going to the gym
Yeah.
and lifting a weight and then progressively, going more higher each time in weight. That was
Mhm.
kind of the what sort of sprung me into the idea of progress because when you start in the gym, it's very simple. Like you can do a weight and then the next time you can do a heavier weight pretty much. If your
Yeah.
training and nutrition and recovery is on point, as a beginner, you can pretty much add weight each session. And so I got really into that. I got really into just getting strong, sort of always did like a powerlifting style of training, which then eventually led me to competing in powerlifting. So I did that
Oh
too.
wow.
Yeah, I've done two meets, which have been really fun. Now my focus, now my focus more so is on bodybuilding and just sort of maintaining health as I focus on business and work, as that's kind of taken over more. But I'm definitely um, planning on competing again in the future.
Beautiful. What was the biggest takeaway in your like powerlifting career?
um, Biggest takeaway, I would say it's really like you have to know why you're doing it
Okay.
because it's not so much like you could be focused on a certain number, like, oh, I want to hit this 600-pound deadlift. And, you get to meet day, or even in just your training, like maybe you're not even competing, maybe you're just training and you
Mm-hmm.
want to hit a number, but it's like maybe it's not there that day or in that month or ever. And
Yeah.
you got to really focus on enjoying the process. And especially as you get more advanced into your lifting career, the PRs do sort of start to spread out farther and farther apart. So you can like sort of make up like new sorts of PRs.
Okay.
Like the other day I was doing Romanian deadlifts and I
Mhm.
like RDL'd like 365 for a set of 8. And I was like, well, that's pretty good. So that's like a PR because I've never done that before. So
What was your during like the powerlifting competitions? What was the highest weight you carried, and for what?
yeah, so the last meet I did was in September and I squatted 493 pounds. I benched 335 and I deadlifted 590.
Wow. Powered by what?
Powered by just good, healthy living, man. Good, healthy lifestyle.
Fuck yeah.
I'm so lucky to have access to such high quality nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Like the company that I'm growing right now started as like a juice company. And basically I started working there because I really liked the product. The
Yeah.
juice was super fresh,
Okay.
unpasteurized, really good organic, high quality ingredients. And I was like, this is a product I can get behind. It's healthy.
Yeah.
And with anything that's sort of like with anything I'm selling, I realize that I really like to know why I'm selling it. And I think you kind of have to understand the reason why a product will benefit a customer if in order to sell it like as like effectively. And so I just did some more research onto the benefits of pasteurization versus
Yeah.
unpasteurization because the owner at the time, all this like stuff was kind of new to me in
Okay.
terms of just like this holistic health and nutrition space. This is kind of how I got into got into where I am today, where
Okay.
I realized more about the benefits of just more local, healthy, artisanal produce.
Right. So that was your start to further taking care of yourself beyond like weightlifting.
Yeah,
What what
totally.
what differences did you see lifting starting to eat this way?
I would
Or not
say
only lifting, man, your life.
lifting and my life, man. I mean, I just feel better personally knowing like where my food came from. I think so many
Mhm.
people today are
Mhm.
disconnected from where their food is actually coming from. Like you go to fucking grocery outlet or you go to Safeway and you're buying this chicken that's just mass farmed and mass
Yeah.
produced, and you're ingesting the soul of an animal that has had like a terrible existence and is pumped
Mhm.
full of antibiotics and is not it's just not good for you. It's not good for the
No.
planet. It's not good for you. I did you like I didn't realize this until recently, but like hens like naturally only will lay like 20 eggs a year. But these like what these farms do is they'll manipulate the hens via feeding and antibiotics so that they'll lay 300 eggs a year, which is crazy.
That's insane. And I feel like that makes the actual egg less nutritional, you know?
Of course. I mean, if they're having to utilize so much more resources to creating that many more
Yeah.
eggs, like they're not putting their entire effort put into the quality of the eggs. It's
Right.
quantity over quality for sure.
Not only that, what they actually feed the chicken.
Oh yeah, of
It's not
course.
even food.
No, yeah, and it's full of antibiotics.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I just did a post about this morning, but the people who buy the most antibiotics, it's not actually doctors, it's farmers. They buy like 70 to 80% of the antibiotics that are sold in the United States.
You know how wild that is, dude?
It's craziness.
It's not only
And
crazy, that's
what's even crazier is that you can buy like these people are allowed to say that their chicken is and their meat is antibiotic free as long as they've not given the antibiotics for like a certain window. So they're allowed to
right.
use antibiotics to artificially grow the chicken because like antibiotics do cause the animals to like get bigger. So that's why they
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why they use them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're allowed to put on the label antibiotic free as long as they have gone through like it's called a withdrawal phase where the animal
Oh,
hasn't been given antibiotics.
it's kind of similar to grass fed, right?
Exactly. Yeah, similar, yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say grass fed is not as bad because grass fed can be like throughout the animal's life is usually grass fed and then they just finish it with grain at the end.
Yeah.
So that's not as bad as a chicken that's being fed antibiotics for its entire life. And then just for like, I don't know how long it is, maybe like a few months, they're not given antibiotics. And then the thing is though, there's allowable minimums for antibiotics in the meat. So, and in stuff like milk too. So
What do
animals
you
are
mean?
allowed to have certain levels of antibiotics in them as long as they meet the allowable minimums.
Do you know which minimums there are? It's probably some ridiculous amount.
It's not to the point. It's not the point to where if you consume it once every now and then, it's gonna harm you. But if you do eat it consistently, then
Yeah.
it can build up. But one of the areas where this is really problematic is in milk, because there are
Okay.
children who drink milk like literally every day, and so there's like allowable minimums for antibiotics in milk, and these and kids are just drinking milk every single day, and that's how antibiotic resistance develops.
Poor humans and poor animals, dude.
Yeah,
It's disgusting.
it is. It
Yeah.
is.
Give me a little bit of more about KrautKrackers. I mean, your introduction to that actual company. Why did it start? You were just looking for a job. Why did they promote you? Um, what kept you like? Why were you still interested in working with them?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I started just working in the juice shop because
Yeah.
that's what the company started as. We started as Central Coast Juicery, and the company began 10 years ago, actually, in 2014.
Oh
Our
wow.
founder, Mark Kaltenbacher, he's a great guy. He's sort of been like a mentor to me and helped me in this journey a lot and educated me a lot about health. So I owe a lot of credit to where I am
Mhm.
today to him. And I met him, and it was funny. Before I started working there, he said, "If you want to work at this company, you need to read this book." And
Oh
the
wow.
book, yeah, the book he gave me was Dopamine Nation by Anna
Oh
Lamke.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read that book. It was a really good book. My
Mhm.
understanding of the brain and dopamine changed a lot after that. But that definitely made me want to work there more because I kind of had to like work for it. You know, I was like, okay,
Mm.
this guy, he's like expecting a bit more of me. It's not just like some job. I mean, in the beginning, it was just like some job. I was
Of
just
course.
working in like a juice store, but
Mhm.
obviously, he still viewed it as important that I understand the health benefits behind the product that I'm
That's
selling.
beautiful.
Yeah, so that's how it began. And we had some other people who were working at the company at the time. Like we
Mhm.
do local delivery, we'll deliver juice to people's houses in the local area. So we had like some delivery drivers, we had some other staff at the store,
Okay.
and I was just working in the juice store, sort of as a starting position, selling juice. And over time, the other people from the company ended up leaving. A lot of them were like sort of hippie types
Okay.
who were just kind of like hippies are kind of just like wanderers. They go from place to place.
Huh.
They're not really they're not really focused. They have a hard time like sitting on one thing.
Okay.
So they
Beautiful
were great
choice.
people though, great
Yeah.
people. But it basically ended up just being me and Mark who were there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so then that led to me, having more responsibility, taking
Mhm.
on more like a managerial role. And we were selling KrautKrackers, which is the fermented cracker that I mentioned before, in our stores for a long time.
Okay.
We had someone who was making them for us,
Okay.
and eventually he decided that he didn't really want to make them anymore. He gave us the recipe, taught us how to make them,
Okay.
and we started making them and selling them. And our customers really liked them. It was a big hit. They always sold well.
Right.
And eventually, Mark and I agreed that the product had more potential
Yeah.
than just
Yes.
like in our local juice stores. So that's what
Beautiful.
began the process of marketing it and getting it into stores. Now today we're in like 20 stores throughout California
Wow.
and growing.
That's beautiful. It kind of all worked well for you, so you can just go out, right? Do you have
Yeah.
any idea why they started the crackers?
Sorry.
Do you have any idea why originally they started the crackers?
Well, it's just a healthy product, man. I
Yeah.
mean, you take the ingredients, it's cabbage, beets, flax
Yeah.
seeds. All of them are ground up and fermented. Actually, in the original version that we were doing, the flax seeds weren't ground up, but they were still fermented. But when
What
you grind up
what
the
does
flax
grind
seeds,
up mean?
like grinding,
Oh,
like
okay.
in a blender, basically.
Okay.
So when you grind the flax seeds, that actually it acts as like a binding agent. So we don't need to use any flours, any other
Oh,
oils, any like processed oils, because when you get flax oil, like flax seed oil from like a store or something, it's gone through a super artificial process. I mean,
mhm,
I'm sure you know about how
mhm.
seed oils, how they're made, how toxic that shit is. But when you just have flax seeds and you just grind them up and you ferment them, you're getting the benefits of the flax seeds minus all the anti-nutrients because they've been fermented. So it's
Mm,
just a healthy product, and especially with the fermentation, it's really good for digestion, prebiotics,
mhm.
and minimizing those anti-nutrients that are found in the plants.
Everything local, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've been working with a local organic farm, Lakeside Organic Gardens. They're just right in our backyard. The
Yeah.
farm that we use they're literally less than 5 miles away from us where we
Oh
get the
wow.
produce.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have you visited the place?
yeah. I have, and I've talked to the owner, and we've done some video content with them actually. So that's going to be something coming up. We're working on another project with them.
That's beautiful. Have you ever been like interested in working in a farm?
Working in a farm myself, I have not personally, no. I find myself more, I think it's cool and I'd love to go do a harvest, but as far as like a full-time working on a farm, I don't think that would be my choice.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, no, I think I have the same take as you. But it's a beautiful way to learn where exactly your food comes from and how it
Of
grows,
course.
how it's
One
processed.
thing I do want to do, I've never milked a cow before. I'd love to do that.
Oh wow. I think I did in school probably like 8 years ago. But I don't remember. I just know there was a project about that and we went to milk cows. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to come to Mexico and we'll have to milk some cows.
Yeah. I don't know any farm to be honest. I mean they're very far away. There's nothing really close to Mexico City. That's kind of the so every Sunday I visit a farmers market that they open like at 8 a.m. every
Mhm.
Sunday. And it's just a bunch of little spots, a bunch of different farms that come together to the city, and they sell from all the points of Mexico. So a lot of product comes from the highest point of Mexico, which is like Monterrey, Tijuana, everything that's kind of close to the U.S. Um, because there's a lot of space and the environment is really nice to grow food on, and most animal products come from there. Um, yeah, it's such an interesting like business and industry how they're being quieted down every single day, how they want to take down their farms, their shops. I mean, it just shows you how real it is and how actually good it is for you. Have you
Yeah.
ever had any experience like that on the shop?
Dude, yeah.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah. Selling unpasteurized juice is something that
Man,
the government does not like.
you would think like
They,
unpasteurized juice isn't like so bad. It's just you can eat an orange.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's
Literally,
crazy. Hmm.
literally. They'll come after us. Um, yeah, it's such a bureaucratic
Yeah,
mess,
yeah.
like having to deal with them. But luckily, we got like this like state permit that we needed for the KrautKrackers
Mm,
for like packaged food, and they basically now, because we were operating on like a county level before just with the juice, now
okay,
we're operating on like a nationwide level with the KrautKrackers
that's
because we're
beautiful.
able to sell them anywhere in the United States.
Hmm.
So now that we have that, it's pretty much like we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Hmm. How much are you
But
producing, by the way, for the crackers? I'm just curious.
in terms of like units,
Yeah.
I'd say right now we're doing everything in house. So we have a production and we have like two pretty big commercial grade dehydrators,
Okay.
and we produce about, I would say, 60 cases a month. 60 cases. So we're doing like around 600 to 800 units a month right now.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What's next for the crackers?
So right now we just got into a store in San Diego, which is pretty exciting. It's
Hmm.
Ocean Beach People's Food Co-op. And right now our target is to really expand into the Southern California area. That's a big market that we have not really opened up yet. Right now we've just been mostly in the
Like
Central
San
California,
San
Central
Diego and
California.
stuff, right?
Yeah, San Diego, LA, all
Okay.
that stuff. You know, we're looking at getting into Lazy Acres markets, which is a chain down in SoCal, and Gelson's would be a good chain for us too.
Mm-hmm.
So expanding our stores, also expanding our e-commerce presence.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting our product out to more affiliates and getting the product into the hands of more people, man. That's what's next, is spreading the word, getting more people to try it, honestly, is the most important thing, because a product like this, a food product, people really need to try it in order to see how good it is. And then, sales and stuff will follow. We're also coming out with a new flavor. We have the taqueria flavor coming out pretty soon, which is, so it's going to be green cabbage, jicama, jalapenos,
Mm-hmm.
carrots, onions, and cilantro.
Oh, wow.
All fermented and then dehydrated.
That's really nice. Who comes up with the ideas?
The idea for that one we got from, it was like another kraut company. They had a very similar mixture of kraut, and so we just thought we would take that and sort of blend it into our cracker.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. What has been your biggest takeaway working in that company?
Biggest takeaway, I would say, one, it's like self-education is vital,
Right.
because I wouldn't be in this position if I hadn't like taken the initiative to learn about all this health stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what's really helped my growth and my knowledge, is
Mm-hmm.
learning about health, and being able to communicate that in those insights to other people has really helped, just in terms of being able to help people understand the value of the product.
Mm-hmm.
Learning sales has also been super super big takeaway. Just interacting with people. One of my big things that I do for the company is I go around to different stores that we sell at, and I'll give out
Mm-hmm.
samples
Mm-hmm.
and do demos. And that's like a great opportunity to sort of train yourself to do sales, because you're just talking to people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like telling people about the product and sort of getting them to buy. So that's a big learning opportunity for me, has been doing that.
That's beautiful. And I feel like this is a good segue to talk about the microbiome, right? This is one of your biggest topics as well, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, with KrautKrackers, the whole benefit of it, is the impact that it has on your microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of it's not necessarily a probiotic product. I want to make that clear. It's more of like a prebiotic product, meaning that when you consume the fiber and the non-digestible carbohydrates
Mm-hmm.
in the cracker, those carbohydrates, they're called non-digestible carbohydrates because they pass through your stomach and go into your gut, where then the bacteria in your gut break them down and release what are called short chain fatty acids, which have numerous like benefits to your health in terms of hormones,
Mm-hmm.
and just your circadian rhythm, metabolism. It's really interesting the impacts that the gut microbiome has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new topic of research that people are just like sort of discovering. It's very new, but the impacts are very, it's clear that the gut microbiome has a big impact on our health.
Mm-hmm. What was your introduction into the topic, the company? Or did you have any like actual troubles with your gut?
I've dealt with my own personal gut issues, particularly when I started lifting. I think that my notion of diet was just way too far off. I was just eating too much of the wrong foods. I would eat like mostly processed foods, because as long as they had protein, that's the only thing that I really cared about. I didn't really care about like the quality of the protein. I was just concerned about getting as much like pasteurized milk down my throat as I could, and cheap protein shakes. And that did lead to some like digestive issues. And then over time, I sort of learned, especially when I moved to college, I learned, how to cook for myself. I was doing more of my own cooking, and that I sort of learned how to eat a healthier diet and lifestyle. And that was like my informal introduction. And then my formal introduction was when I started reading more books on gut health, and just learning about more gut health related topics, especially as it relates to our product and what we sell.
What would you say in your experience would be like the most overlooked part of our gut health?
Yeah, I would say the most overlooked thing is fiber and prebiotics.
Okay.
Um, Especially, I see this in the health community, is like people don't really focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the benefit that fiber has to your gut. Basically, fiber is, like I said before, is what's digested by your gut bacteria. So you need to feed those bacteria that live in your gut,
Oh,
and you need to feed the right ones. The bacteria in your gut, they want to thrive and grow, but they're not going to be able to if they don't have the fuel that they need. And fiber is that fuel for those gut bacteria to grow and proliferate. Now, there are some people who have issues with some types of fiber,
okay.
particularly like the FODMAP foods, and those can be problematic for people.
Okay. Hmm. So diet rich in local fiber is really good for the gut.
Yeah, yeah, fiber, it helps if it's fermented, which is why KrautKrackers
Yeah.
are like really so good, because
Mm-hmm.
the problem that people do have with digesting fibers does come from the anti-nutrients that are found in plants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oxalates are a big one,
Mm-hmm.
especially in purple cabbage. Flax seeds do have another anti-nutrient called, it's I think it's called cyanogenic glycosides,
Oh, wow.
something like that. The name might be wrong, but
Okay.
it is a anti-nutrient. But when you ferment flax seeds, that gets completely, like almost completely eliminated.
That's
So
incredible.
fermentation is like a form of pre-digestion, and it makes the food more hospitable for your gut to break down and digest.
Right. I feel like a really cool rabbit hole for you right now that you're really interested in fermented foods and the gut is how light interferes with our gut, right?
Yeah,
How our microbiome emits its own light and how it changes with the food you eat. It's a huge rabbit hole that I've gone to in the past months, and it's actually something that I posted really big about this week, which is a cool synchronicity.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more. I've been dialing in my like circadian rhythm big time, just because I realize like how important that is, especially with like just the constant blue light that's bombarding us like everywhere we go, pretty much.
Right. So along those lines, I wanted to ask, what has been like the biggest thing you've done for your health with like the biggest impact, or at least the one that you appreciate the most?
It's gotta be getting in the gym, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's gotta be it. Like I think diet probably has had the most impact,
Mm-hmm.
but for like mental health and like what I enjoy doing with my life and what I notice like really makes a difference is in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
because the gym is not only a place to improve your health, it's also a community of people.
Mm-hmm.
At least where I go to, like you just meet so many more like-minded people, and when you just walk around and you look like you lift, people give you more respect.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, man. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people treat you differently if they can tell that you like work out and treat yourself well,
Mm-hmm.
because you're walking around displaying discipline. That's literally what
Mm-hmm.
it
That
is.
is very well said.
Yeah, well, that's actually a quote from Justin Waller. He said when you walk around when you walk around and you look like you lift, you're displaying discipline. You're
Mm-hmm.
showing other people that you've been working, and
Mm-hmm.
people recognize that either consciously or subconsciously, but they
Mm-hmm.
recognize it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's beautiful. I want to touch on another topic which I'm obsessed right now with, and I know you've had some experience with, which is psychedelics.
Oh yes.
Yeah. How was
Yeah,
your
at
introduction into this world?
first I'd love to hear how your experience went yesterday.
Yeah. Um, so it wasn't a big trip, right? It was a microdose, but it was a big microdose, zero point 0.3
Mhm.
grams.
Yeah.
Um, it was a really weird day. I think the day after the microdose was really interesting how reflective my mind was without me actually pausing to reflect, if that makes sense. Like there was a lot of feeling, so many synchronicities, so much. But the day I took it was Friday after my breakfast, a little bit after my breakfast. I remember I was in a coffee shop. There was a lot of people, and an hour in, I was like, I want to be here, like that. I was feeling something with so many people that I was like, I need to go home. And at that same time, there was this very deep, powerful feeling of like gratitude towards nature and the universe. When I got home, this is really trippy. I would think about certain people and I would relate, or I would feel kind of negative feelings. And those feelings or emotions, which were in pieces, like I would feel one specifically, it would be very intense. Like it would be anger, it would be 30 minutes of anger, right? Like a very intense mental feeling of anger, nothing physical. I was a little bit annoyed. It was so weird. And I remember after lunch, I was already feeling relaxed. Everything went away. And like the next day, I was feeling the opposite emotions with the same people also intensified, if that makes sense. Yeah, very reflective. And what's crazy is that's just one pill out of 14 more to go, right? And it's a locally grown. Oof, I would love to know the name of the mushroom. It's not an easy one. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not. It's not the classic one. What's the name of the?
Psilocybe cubensis.
Yeah, yeah. We don't grow any in the city, but this one's locally grown, harvested, dehydrated, and made into like powder for the pills, of course.
Mhm.
You can feel an energy, like you can feel something with just looking at the actual thing. And now I'm approaching this microdose. There's an intention to the actual 15 pills, and there's an
Mhm.
intention with every single one of them. That makes sense. I don't know if you've microdosed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I want to know about you and your introduction to that world.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Can I just
Yeah,
ask one more question?
of
What
course.
what is your protocol that you're doing? Like how frequently?
Right. I've been very indecisive with the protocol, but I think that I've accepted one, which is based on what I've felt the past 2 days, which is I'm taking the pill a day and I'm resting 2 days. One of those days is like a reflection day, and the other one is like a relaxed day with the actual dose. Um, when I'm taking the microdose, I'm doing half a teaspoon, sorry, of baking soda after the pill, and I'm doing 1.5 grams of lion's mane with the dose. And the days that I don't take the psilocybin, I just do like 1 gram of lion's mane. And the reason I'm doing baking soda, which I feel is a little bit unconventional, is the doctor that I'm doing with hasn't had really good experience with niacin, but I still want a vasodilator on my protocol. So
Mhm.
that's why I chose baking soda, and I see like no side effects. I use it almost every day. Yeah,
Great.
that's it.
It sounds like you're very intentional with this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. I
My
mean,
introduction was not as
yeah.
um, it kind of happened when I was 17, so close to your age.
Hmm.
But in high school, I kind of went through a more sort of stoner weed kind of phase, and growing up in San Francisco, man, that's just kind of the way. It's just kind of the way things go.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
I
You weren't skating by then, right?
no, not
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But my introduction was through a friend I had at the time, and he was like, "Hey, I have this stuff." He was sort of telling me about his experience, and I was like, "That sounds pretty crazy, man. Like,
Hmm.
I'd be interested in trying that." And so I took the mushrooms with a friend of mine, and we were the first time I did them, I think I did like 2 grams. It was
Okay.
like maybe a little bit more, but like around 2 grams. And we were just in my friend's house. We were watching Bob Ross painting videos
Yeah.
the first time. And as we were watching him paint, we started to see things in the paintings that weren't there.
Okay.
Like we were starting to see like dragons, and we started to
Wow.
see clouds with like faces and all sorts
Mhm.
of crazy stuff. And we were just like laughing our heads off hysterically. It was just like the most like happy and like joyful
Oh,
experience.
wow.
But in the moment, what it was like, it was so surreal to me because I was experiencing like a completely different form of consciousness.
Mhm.
And at the time too, this is probably important to note, is like I was like a big, not big, I was like into like the atheistic type of thinking,
Okay.
not very spiritual, not very spiritually connected to life or any of that stuff. And when I took the mushrooms, I totally experienced a
Wow.
transformation in my
Wow.
consciousness, and I felt a connection to something greater. I was like, wow, like there's really like something more mystical, more magical to life than I really can comprehend here. And
Right.
maybe I shouldn't be so assured that I know what's going on, because in reality no one really knows what's going on. We're all just sort of
Mhm.
here, and we have these experiences, and we could try and interpret them, and we could try and say this means this, and we can use different lenses. Like science is one lens that we use to interpret life.
Yeah. Mhm.
But science definitely misses out on a lot. It misses out on the more mystical experience aspects and the more mystical elements of life. And so that's what I experienced in that first trip, and that kind of opened the door in my mind to
Mhm.
a more spiritual way of living, a more spiritual side to me.
Did you feel or see that connection?
The first trip I felt it. On the
Mhm.
second trip I saw it.
Whoa, what did you see?
Sorry.
What did you see?
So the second trip, after my first experience, which was like mind blowing, crazy, like beyond anything I ever expected, like that
Mhm.
trip sort of like it felt like the veil was like lifted, and I
Wow.
was able to I sort of came into like a new mode of existing, because I think also at the time I was just smoking a lot of weed, like I said, and that weed kind of has the opposite effect where it can kind of dampen things. I would
Mhm.
say if you're doing it consistently, it can sort of put like a haze over
Mhm.
you.
Okay.
And I felt at the time like I wasn't necessarily fully conscious in my own life, which was crazy. And then the mushrooms sort of like pulled me back in, and I was like,
Wow.
whoa,
Yeah.
yeah. People who are listening to this who are sober, they're gonna be like, this dude is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
He's
Mhm.
like talking about fixing one drug problem with another.
Yeah.
But no, it's true, man. So the second time I took mushrooms was, I want to say like a few months, maybe like 6 months after that first experience, because I felt like I needed a lot of time to let that experience sort of
Of course.
settle
Mhm.
and integrate that. And I was a little like, it's not something like, after you have an intense experience, it's not really something you're really eager to like jump back into,
Mhm.
because the reality is there's like, you can go through a lot of highs and lows in a mushroom experience. It's not necessarily all, like you said, you felt anger. Like that's not
Yeah.
a positive. It's not all positive.
No.
So you experience a lot of different emotions,
You
and
not
it can be
only
intense.
sorry, but
No, go for
based
it.
based out of a lot of things that I've read and a lot of people close to me, you not only just feel these things, but you work a lot of stuff during these experiences.
You like work through stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, totally. I mean, you come to realizations, insights about your path, what you should be doing, what you're doing wrong, what you need to change, all this stuff. And I mean, that's intense to
Yeah.
experience. To realize that is not, it's not always easy, because oftentimes it's like a truth that you've been avoiding. So
Mhm.
it can be uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second time got really cocky, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna double the dose. So I went to like 4 grams,
Yeah.
and that was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I throughout my life, throughout my experience, I've had many experiences with psychedelics, but I've always been able to handle it. I've never had an experience where it's like been over. I mean, I have had overwhelming experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but I've always like emerged on the other side, like
Okay.
grateful that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So this experience was with 4 grams, and it was with a different friend. This time we started, instead of indoors, we started outdoors
Wow.
in like Golden Gate Park or sorry, not Golden Gate Park. It's in San Francisco. It's called the Presidio. It's a big park that is sort of near where the Golden Gate Bridge is.
Okay.
And we just took them. I don't know. My friend, he didn't really. I think he did a microdose, but I wasn't. I think he might have been sober too. He was just
Okay.
there as like sort of like a trip sitter.
Okay.
So I'm glad that even back then I had like that notion of like
Mm-hmm.
having someone there, because if you are doing like a higher dose, it's super important that you have someone there who you feel safe with, because
Mm-hmm.
they like, whether it's like a guide or like a friend, you
Mm-hmm.
know, ideally it's like a guide if you're doing it in like a guided
Yeah.
setting,
Mm-hmm.
someone who can like really help you through the experience, but just having someone there who can ensure your physical safety, because when you're tripping, you might just totally leave your physical body. Like that's totally
Yeah.
possible to
Mm-hmm.
have happen to you. And so when you have that security of knowing that someone's there protecting you, your physical body, you can just totally let go and surrender to the
Mm-hmm.
experience, which is big, very important.
What did you see in that trip? How did you meet that divinity?
So yeah, it was a meeting actually. I didn't meet it.
Mm-hmm. How did you
Uh,
see it, at least?
yeah. Um, so I was coming up and it was getting very intense. Like colors were like vivid, popping out, super vibrant, everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I was getting this feeling, this very heavy feeling in my body, like I was just gonna sink into the earth.
Okay.
And I kind of was like, okay, I don't really want to sink into the earth when I'm outside. I kind of want to like be inside where I can like know I'm safe. It's again,
Mm-hmm.
it's the feeling of safety is super important. You got to have that, because if you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel safe, it's gonna be really hard to let go and surrender to the
Mm-hmm.
experience. So I went to my friend's house. He just happened to be close by, happened to just be home and have his house available for us to come and hang out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we went over to his house, and pretty much right when I got there, I collapsed like into his bed,
Wow.
and I just went face down into the bed, and it sort of felt like I started to like sink into the bed a bit,
Mm-hmm.
like falling, like imagine like it's like
You
it's
continue
like
like.
Play-Doh, it's like Play-Doh or putty, like you're just sinking
Mm-hmm.
into it,
Mm-hmm.
and like lower and lower and lower, and then it felt like sort of like I was like submerged into
Mm-hmm.
his mattress or something like that. It's a pretty crazy feeling, but like super comfortable, like warmth, like feeling like I was surrounded with warmth,
Wow.
and just I fully let go in that moment because it was so peaceful. And that's when I met like an entity.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was something that there was something that came out of the darkness. I mean, I was just closing my eyes, so there was a lot of like movement and geometric shapes that was happening, but
Mm-hmm.
it was like I said, a very warm, comforting feeling. And in that space, there was this entity that sort of emerged out of that and started communicating with me.
Wow. What'd you receive from that entity?
So it took the form of, do you know like those Olmec head statues?
Mm-hmm. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's crazy.
So
Wow.
it kind of looked like that, except
Whoa.
it was like changing, like, you know, it's like constantly like changing sort of like the texture, the color, but that was the sort of like the vibe, the shape, the outline that it took on.
That's blowing my mind a little bit, because psychedelic mushrooms come from Mexico, and the first people who experienced these trips were the Olmecs, the Aztecs, and the Mayans.
Hmm.
So that is wild for you to meet that.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it was like some Akashic records type stuff.
Whoa, that's so cool.
But it's also interesting when you think about, like, you hear people who are like Christian and they take mushrooms and they say, "Oh, I met Jesus," and
Yeah,
then that trip affirms their Christian belief.
yeah.
Have
Of
you ever
course.
met anyone like that?
No, I mean, that's one of the questions that I ask everyone that I know have done any trips or come from a trip.
Mhm.
Did you meet someone? Did you meet a guy? Did you see something? and I haven't had a yes from that yet. You're the first one that I ever hear. I mean, like talking to, I've seen
Yeah.
online and heard on the Joe Rogan Experience, but that's just beautiful to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, since then I have never had like another entity encounter like
Wow.
that.
Wow.
But yeah, I've also been more conservative in my dosing since then. But it was very magical because it was distinctly like a separate form of consciousness. I sensed that it was a separate form of consciousness that was it, but it was like in my own mind that it was appearing. So it was super crazy. And like,
Did you feel that it came from the mushroom or somewhere else?
I mean, in that moment, it felt like it came from somewhere else. The
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms were definitely allowing me to like tap into that experience, but I can't really say for sure like
Yeah.
what it was, you know?
And I had this question before you said it about the Olmec thing. Your friends, after your experience, after your
Mhm.
trip, how did they see you? What was their take on it? Do you remember?
Their take was that obviously I was very high, but you know, they were totally like chill with like me just like hanging out there. I don't think that I didn't really discuss it with them right in the moment because
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
when I came out of that experience, I was sort of like my brain was sort of like fried a little bit. Like it felt like I just had so much stimulation that I
Wow.
couldn't really process what
Mm-hmm.
just happened. I didn't really understand what happened myself until the next day. And I was like, what? I really like received contact from something that was like foreign, which was
Wow.
crazy. But
Do
yeah, I
you
didn't even
remember
tell you what
dreaming
it like.
something special? Oh
Sorry.
yeah. Hold on. You tell me what the face told you.
Yeah. So when it started communicating to me, that feeling of warmth, it expanded like into my whole body, and it was like it started to feel like really intense love, like
Wow.
love that was coming out of every single pore of my body, like light that was like sort of coming out of me and like shooting out of me, and it basically was communicating to me that love is like the most important force in the world, and it is a force of the universe is love.
Wow.
So it made me feel that. It showed me that directly. It was communicating that to me energetically, and
Wow.
that was very very powerful.
Wow. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing today. What has been the most meaningful experience you've had?
On psychedelics,
Yeah.
that was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Um, that's probably like the most impactful one that I've had because out
Wow.
of all the trips that I've had, that one probably sticks out the most in my memory.
Hmm. Was
Because it was my second trip ever, so also was like sort of like a novel thing to
mhm.
me too, where I was just like new to the space. I wasn't really fully. I mean, I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time, and then to just have that experience was like crazy, you know, out of nowhere. But I have had experiences on LSD as well, which
Mhm.
is a very different um, compound, and that one feels much more. That one feels much more like it's programming me. I would say,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, because when I've done LSD, it feels like I'm receiving information not from like an entity, but from the universe itself.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and like it feels like my brain is just tapped into something like some source of consciousness that's like somewhere else, and it's just like transmitting stuff into my brain. Like it feels much like mushrooms feels much more natural and like
Hmm.
grounding, and just I don't know how to describe it other than earthy and natural and
Right.
grounding. LSD is like electricity. Like your brain is basically like becomes like a 5G tower that is able to like tune into different frequencies at different times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along those lines, I was going to ask, like, what have you felt? Are those the only two psychedelics you've tried?
I've tried mushrooms, LSD, and salvia. Those three.
Whoa. How's the experience with salvia?
I've never gone balls to the wall with salvia. I think I like to research, and this is something that I recommend everyone does. Before you take anything, you have to research it before you decide to
Shit.
do
Besides that,
anything.
if you can find an actual professional guide, that's even better, right?
Yes, yes, of course. That is way better. And I mean, that's hard to do because I mean, they're illegal, so it's not something that's common, and you really do have to go out of your way. But researching is step number one,
Mhm.
understanding like what you're getting into.
Right.
If you even want to do this substance, you should definitely research it. So with salvia, that's one that I researched the crap out of before I ever tried it, just because I was more just fascinated by the experiences that people had on it.
Right.
And that one's still like very mysterious because it's not actually like most of the experiences that people have on it are what people classify as dysphoric, so
Mhm.
not comfortable.
Mhm.
Like people say that they experience discomfort on salvia. I personally have never experienced discomfort on salvia because I've only ever done the dried leaf,
Okay.
which is like which is like just the salvia plant
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm.
What people do is they'll take the extract
Right.
of salvia and they'll multiply it so you'll get like 10x, 20x, 30x salvia, and that's what most people are doing. And
Mhm.
that leads to like a crazy intense experience that people are
Right.
just not prepared for.
Mhm. Yeah, it's crazy. I've read it. That's one of the psychedelics that I've most read about recently, and the experiences are horrifying. I've read people becoming bookshelves and living as
Yeah.
a bookshelf for like months.
Yep.
Um,
Inanimate objects. People become inanimate objects all the time,
right. You
or
have
just
this. You have
go
this.
into like the void and just exist in the
Right.
void. You
Yeah.
know.
You have this comedian who was in Rogan who said that in under like 8 minutes he lived a 6 month life under the water with a girlfriend. He had kids. He had friends. He had a life. Um, so trippy. That's why I'm so interested in the plant.
Yeah, I know, and it's fascinating how these compounds just exist in nature. And then,
Right.
I mean,
That's
obviously
what's
LSD
crazy.
doesn't exist in nature, but it's
Hmm.
derived from something natural. But
Hmm.
like mushrooms and salvia, like and DMT, like all this stuff, it just exists in nature,
It
and
is so wild.
it's there for us to experience. I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard. It's kind of hard to think that that stuff is not meant for us to experience. You know?
you're reading my mind. Yeah. I was gonna ask between these three psychedelics, what have you felt are like the energetic differences? Not the actual experience, but for example, I've heard people describe psilocybin as more as like a female energy, and you have peyote, which is the cactus, of more as like a grandpa energy. Um, have you had any experience with that?
I mean, like I said, the mushrooms, the way that I would describe them is
Mhm.
I don't know if I would describe it as feminine. Maybe I could see the mushrooms being feminine because
Mhm.
I always become very playful and like
Oh wow.
silly when I'm on them.
Okay.
And and acid, when I'm on acid, it always strikes me as very like serious. Like I get the
Okay.
vibe that like things are very serious. I have to like
Mhm.
sit down and pay attention because
Mhm.
this is like a serious matter that
Okay.
I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see that there's like a masculine feminine dynamic there. One thing that I get on acid that I don't get on mushrooms is a ton of energy. Like my body just wants to move around and it just wants to
Really?
like do stuff in the
Really?
physical world. Yeah,
Like during the trip or after it?
during the trip. Like
And what?
especially maybe not on the higher doses, but on the lower doses, you get like this crazy energy. Like dude, skateboarding on acid is
Oh shit.
dude, it is the best. Like I haven't done it in such a long
Oh,
time,
okay.
but it is such a good experience. Back in San Francisco, I had this
Oh
one
my god, dude, you're basically like flying.
yeah, basically I had this one time in San
Oh.
Francisco. There's like this very like famous crew of skaters in San Francisco called GX 1000. And
Mhm.
one time I was on acid, like at the top of Twin Peaks. It's like this high point in San Francisco, It's the highest point in San Francisco, and from Twin Peaks, you can skate like in any direction you want, basically. There's like two ways that you go down, but then after you go down Twin Peaks, there's like that like tens of hills that you can go down. It's basically like I view San Francisco as like a ski resort for skating, basically.
Okay.
But I was on LSD on the top of Twin Peaks, and this crew of skaters was there, and they were like, "We're going down," and I was like, "Okay, I'm going down with you guys." And so I'm like going down, and it feels like when I'm skating, it feels like the world is moving underneath me. It doesn't feel like I'm moving through the world. It feels like the world is like moving underneath me, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
Which was just it was the craziest experience to describe. And like I was being very careful because I was like, I know I'm like high, like I don't want to like hurt myself. But it was this very surreal experience.
That's incredible, dude. Here's another topic I want to discuss on psychedelics, which I feel like it's one of the biggest takeaways people have from these experiences, which is, and you've said it here, which is surrender. You have no other option, right? If not, you have a bad trip. How has that been for you, man?
Yeah, I have a very good I have a very good story about this, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So one of my trips I did. So all of my stories, I want people to realize that these are examples of stuff that you probably should not do.
Okay.
These are examples, and I honestly I would not do this stuff today, just because I've matured so much in the past like 3 to 4 years that it's like I look at the stuff that I did in the past, and I'm like, I would not do that again. But I had the experience, and I'm actually grateful for it because I did learn from it. I mean, I think you learn a lot from what not to do. But basically, the experience that I had was the first time I did a heroic dose of mushrooms, 5 grams. I actually remember I said I broke my leg?
Right.
I was recovering from that broken leg when I decided to do this, and I still had a cast on my leg.
Shit, what did you do?
So I was like silent. I was like, I'm gonna do it like the way that Terrence, Terrence McKenna?
I think I do.
He's like, he talks a lot. He's a big psychedelics guy. You should definitely like.
Oh, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, he's good. But like, he talks about doing 5 grams of mushrooms in silent darkness. That was his thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna do that. I just want to see what it's like. So I basically like just block out an entire night, and I have this cast on, and in my mind, looking back, it was like idiotic, but in my mind, I was like, well, I have this cast on, so I can't like move anyways. So I'm just gonna like be totally fine if I just like stay in one place for the entire trip. So I take the mushrooms, and it's like coming on, and then I start to realize that something's not right. And what I realize is not right is because the cast was preventing, like, imagine this is my leg, this is my ankle. I can't move my ankle because the cast is like locking my ankle in place. So I become hyper aware of the fact that my ankle is locked in place and I can't move my ankle. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to surrender because my body isn't free to like fully relax, essentially.
Okay.
So I basically end up resisting the experience for the entire time. I resisted the entire trip. And that taught me some like really powerful things about surrender.
Wow.
Because in my mind, I was like, I know I need to surrender. I know I could surrender if I didn't have this cast. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's such a like an actual beautiful experience.
Yeah, because the whole time I was aware of the fact that I needed to surrender, and that I was trying to actively, and maybe I could have. I'm not sure if it was really just a mental block, but because I had this, it felt like this thing was like keeping me grounded into reality. Like the fact that I couldn't move my leg, and also that my leg was broken. I was also becoming hyper aware of the fact that my leg was broken, and I was like feeling like where the bone was broken and
Oh
feeling it
no.
deeply. And I was
Mhm.
also like, I was also listening to an Alan Watts lecture where he mentioned some part of like the soul being contained within your bones, and then that really struck
Whoa.
deeply with me, especially because the fact that my leg was broken. I'll have to find that exact lecture because something he said just really like clicked with me like that, and it was about bones.
Wow. Have you, I mean, you mentioned this in one of, you mentioned this just a couple minutes ago. Have you left your physical body in a trip?
That is something I've never done
You've never
before.
experienced anything.
No, no.
Wow.
I
Have
mean,
you heard
I've
of anything
experienced
like
that.
that?
I've experienced that in dreams, but I've never experienced that
Okay.
on a psychedelic before.
That's
How about
beautiful.
you?
No, not even on dreams. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. Let's talk
So
about,
a common dream. I think dreams are the dream and psychedelic connection is very
right.
fascinating.
I wanted to
But
ask that as well.
a common dream that I get actually is about um, being abducted by UFOs.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it ties into like sleep paralysis and all this stuff where the dreams where I'm getting abducted is it feels like I'm just frozen and I'm getting lifted up out of my body,
Yeah.
and so my body sort of like my soul gets separated from my body, and then whenever that happens it usually just becomes like a void, and that's usually when I become aware of the fact that I'm dreaming because there's no longer any like stimulus keeping me distracted, and then that's when I become conscious and I realize, oh shit, I'm dreaming, and then I'll usually either wake up or I'll trigger like a lucid dream.
So there's been repetitive dreams like that after trips?
Not after trips, I mean just happens sort of
Oh,
randomly.
okay. Yeah, that's wild. Max, let's talk about ideology versus open-mindedness, which is something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, totally. So I think this is a big thing in like the health space is
Hmm.
that, and it's something that I see a lot in it's in every aspect of life, whether you talk about health, fitness, politics, sports, whatever. I mean, ideology is everywhere.
Right.
And ideology is basically when you subscribe to a set of ideas and that set of ideas becomes your worldview and you don't allow anything else in. And so I see this a lot. You know, we typically think of this as like a doctor who is like so set on their paradigm, their Western medical paradigm, that they
Hmm.
can't ever open their mind to anything that's alternative, anything that's holistic health. They need like data and they need evidence and they need the medical community to support it before they accept it
Hmm.
and agree that it's legit and is valid.
Hmm.
But alternatively, what I see in the health food space too is that there's people who just go the complete opposite direction and they'll make their ideology whatever is the antithesis of the Western medical um, ideology. So their
Wow.
ideology, in a sense, becomes what is whatever is against the Western medical industry.
Eastern ideology. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think both of those are limiting. I think
Hmm.
what I do is I look at, you know, what's true. How do you find what's true? That's what I
Hmm.
care the most about. I don't really care about what fits a certain narrative. I don't really care about what is going to make me look the best. I care more about the truth than any of that stuff. So that means, you know, that means applying nuance. That means looking at the data on both sides and actually delineating between the two.
Right. What made you aware of this? Like, why did
Uh,
you start to ponder about this?
I've just noticed that it's something has that's always been present in my life,
Okay.
particularly particularly with like politics. Honestly, like I've grown up in a very like liberal area of the world, and I've
Hmm.
seen so many people that I know fall victim to ideology and not being willing to be open to real conversation, real discussion, real debate. So certain times, like certain people will just immediately shut off whenever you bring up certain topics to them. And so I
Right.
think what's super important is that we all remain open-minded and are able to have difficult conversations because
Hmm.
and this is something you learn from psychedelics too. It's like you don't learn stuff from the easy trips, you learn stuff from the hard trips, and the same as goes for conversations. You don't really learn as much when you talk to someone that agrees with you. You learn more when you talk to someone who disagrees with you, and you learn and you actually have a conversation with them, and you learn where you disagree, what exactly you disagree on. But that's rare nowadays. People don't talk to each other, and it just creates echo chambers like we see
Right.
like is so common in the internet.
Right. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I dropped out. The ideology of my school. It's just one path. You can only see things one way, and if you dare to see it differently, then you're just fucking weird.
What specifically did you see differently?
No, I mean it wasn't really everything. I started to notice how ordered everything was. Like it was so just like this, right? Very myopic, very like if you have you ever seen horses with like the things here?
Blinders, yeah.
Right. Just having that on every single day, every day, your creativity and your freedom is locked and controlled by the teachers and just more above that. People just, I mean, the reason why I dropped out was because I started to notice that we weren't being taught how to think, but what to think. And that was it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Max, so for my last question,
Yeah.
what brings you most joy in life?
That's a very deep question.
Yeah.
I have thought a lot about that, but I would say that what brings me most joy in life is creating, honestly.
Beautiful.
And that can be creating content, that can be creating new connections with people. But as far as what brings me joy, I think constantly creating, because when I'm creating, that means I'm going to be growing and moving forward. What is the opposite of joy for me is like being stagnant, which is actually getting worse. Stagnation actually means you're getting worse. There's really no such thing as like staying the same, because even if you think you're staying the same, you're still like one day closer to dying, essentially. So you haven't stayed the same. You've gotten worse, and you've minimized your time on this planet, while at the same time, other people have surpassed you. So I don't know, that some people would say that's like a paranoid way of looking at it, but I don't view it that way at all,
No,
because
it's beautiful.
I think maximizing your potential is maximizing your joy.
Wow. That was really well said. Thank you, Max. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time, your wisdom, saying yes to this podcast.
Thanks for having me, dude. It was a pleasure.
Oh, always, man. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, bro.